Okay, this is the next video. The first one was on the rule book and the tokens that come in the Mage Wars new expansion set. The next thing that we're going to be going over is Forcemaster cards. So first we'll start off with the Forcemaster card art. As you can see, she's pretty badass. She reminds me a lot of Diablo 3's Demon Hunter in terms of style, but yeah, she still has her own unique flavor. As you can see, she has some of her key gear on her, and we'll be talking about that here in a moment. Alright, so before we get into the gear, here's the Forcemaster's card. You'll notice that she has the deflectability, which we talked about in the tokens. So she can pay 1 mana and get a 7+ roll to defense. In addition, you'll note here that she is much like the wizard in that she doesn't have a whole lot of health. However, her channeling is 10, which is pretty awesome. But she has a lot of spells that require upkeep, so although you start off with 10, once you get some of your more powerful spells out, you'll find that your channeling minus upkeep is not as large of a number as you'd like. So you got to manage that for sure. Now with Mind School spells, she is able to pay just 1, or actually, sorry, the equivalent cost on level. So for example, for Invisible Fist, which is one of the new cards, the level is a 1, so she would only pay 1. However, for creatures that are non-mage creature spells, she pays a whopping 3 times the cost. And so that is pretty darn expensive if you wanted to include anything like a Hydra or an Angel. Okay, so next, gonna go over some of her equipment. This is one of my favorites. She gets this dancing sword, and so what it does is not only is it a defense, but it's also a attack card. So here we have it has an upkeep of 1. It's autonomous. Once per round, it can either defend or attack. And so this, if you decide to use this, and they're in the same zone as a goblin who's on guard, you can attack the goblin with this and maybe even kill it, and he wouldn't get his counter attack because this is autonomous, so he wouldn't be able to do that. So next we have, oh, I should note though that it makes an attack using a ready marker, and I believe in the rules that it says that this guy can only attack after the creature that it's attached to does its action. But I'm not going to get that detailed into the rules. I'm just going to read what's on the card. Force Ring. We have Force Ring. Once per round, the mage may pay 1 less mana for casting and revealing a force spell. So obviously that's something you want to put on very early. Another ring that she has, which is pretty amazing, is a defense ring. And so these are cards that come in their recommended first play of her. So this would turn her deflectability into a 6+ defense, which is pretty amazing. And so if you threw on also maybe Force Sword and the Orb spell from the original set, she would be pretty tough to hit, and you would have to use unavoidable attacks almost. Alright, lastly, as I mentioned, she has a lot of upkeep spells, and so there's this card, Psych Orb, and so each upkeep phase you're going to pay 1 less mana for upkeep for up to 3 different spells you control. So sadly, it's not 3 mana total for any one spell, or all 3 spells. You got to only have 1 mana discount for each. So you'll see later on that some of the spells that require upkeep are pretty expensive, and one alone is pretty detrimental to your overall channeling, or I should say channeling minus upkeep. So next is I think one of everybody's favorite cards. So this Force Blade is able to make ethereal attacks, piercing 2 as a quick attack, and then it also has a full action where you can sweep or double strike. That is pretty ridiculous, and I can't wait to use it more. One other thing to note is it has this cantrip ability, and what that means is if this guy gets destroyed, it goes back in your book rather than in your discard pile. That means you're still going to have to pay the 11 mana to bring it back out, but you'll always have access to it. Okay, next we have the Storm Drake Hide. So this is much like the anti-flame armor that was in the initial set of cards, except it's lightning resistance. Next is the Wall Pikes, which many of you have seen on the spoilers. Now this one is pretty neat because it's only directional, so you can go through it as a friendly unit from the back, or as an enemy unit from the back. But if you try to walk through with the pointy side facing you, then you're in trouble. Okay, so I'll call this one a Psylocke. It is pretty situational, but definitely something that you could use to annoy your opponent. For 8 mana, it's kind of expensive for an annoying your opponent spell, but it would work well against Beastmasters, which may not have many ranged attack units. You'll note that it's ethereal, unavoidable, and critical damage, so armor does not matter with this guy, which is pretty awesome. But for only 8 health, if they have any ranged units like the Goblin Slinger that we'll see later, then you are seriously in trouble. Alright, I will note that with this new set, they include many copies of each spell so that you can form a book that fits the playstyle that you have, and in addition you could almost do 2 sets, 2 Force Mages, Forcemaster Mages going against each other. There's some spells that are not repeated, but it's almost to the point where you could do 2, which is pretty awesome if you're looking to play this with a family member or a friend. So, okay, so next is the Thought Spore. Thought Spore is flying, familiar, spellbinding, and so it can use a level 1 or 2 attack spell, in addition an incantation spell. So you could put Force Push on this. You could put something more powerful like a Fireball on this, I believe. I might have to check my rules, but I think a Fireball is a level 2 spell. So that is pretty powerful. However, you have a couple of these guys out, or even just one, and you're going to find that you're not going to have enough mana to use him if you're casting some other costly spells. Although in a clutch situation, you may want to push something 3 times, or you may want to cast 3 fireballs or whatever, and something like this would come handy. But you got to plan ahead, because once you bind a spell to this card, which happens on deployment, you're stuck with it. So it's not like the Raven from the original deck. Cool. Okay, next we have the Invisible Stalker. He's one of my favorites for sure. You'll notice he has the upkeep that we were talking about. He also has Invisible, which he becomes revealed, just like I showed you with that token, after he performs his attack. So you pretty much have to go with him last each round. If you have the initiative, you're probably going to be stuck either letting him do nothing, or you're going to have to take him into a location that's a little bit more remote, or in a square where nothing else can hit him because their action markers have already been flipped. Yeah. Okay. Another one of my favorites, Mind Control. You can see that the rules are somewhat long on this, but basically, when you mind control something, it's stunned that turn. The following turn, once you flip its action marker, that stun's removed, and then the following turn you're able to use him. So against a really powerful creature, this would be awesome, but expensive. But I found that even taking out cheaper units that are going against your strategy, such as a range unit, works pretty darn well. Now, when this gets removed, that creature gets stunned too. So you almost get 2 rounds of the creature out of your hair. So it's almost like a mini banish, and even if you're not able to get some attacks out of the creature, but you throw a nullify or something like that on this, on the creature that has this, and you could probably keep him mind controlled for a good portion of time. Okay, well, if you don't have the mana for mind control, there's the charm card. So charm card looks pretty neat in terms of basically it prevents a really damaging unit from attacking your mage. Sadly, it doesn't protect your whole army, but if with the Forcemaster you're often alone, or you're the one that's in the front with back supporters, squares behind you. So this could be fairly effective. Okay, so in the original set you had the Circle of Electricity, or Lightning I believe it was called. This one is Circle of Fire, so for those who want to do more damage and less without the stun or daze ability, this would work really well. You'll also note that this looks like a female warlock. So in future sets, the female warlock might be made available. From what I've heard from talking to Patrick, it will be coming out. Not exactly sure when, but it'll be pretty neat because they'll also have new ability cards, so to spice things up. So it's kind of like there's multiple types of warlocks out there, and they all went to the same school, but they each have their own unique abilities. So this card is pretty ridiculous. It's called Force Crush. With Force Crush, that creature gets restrained, unmovable, and it takes direct damage. So that doesn't get affected by armor, I believe. And that would be pretty deadly. And so unlike Force Hold, you also are killing it over time. So might want to throw it on a creature that's in poison gas or something like that. Okay, Force Field. This card is essential to the Forcemaster's build. It is, when you flip it, you get 3 Force Field tokens, and the next 3 attacks get blocked. So imagine having 3 blocked cards on your character. That's what this is like. And then each upkeep, it gains an additional token. So you're always going to start the next turn with one of these, 1 token. However, you'll notice that the upkeep is 2. That can get expensive when you think of only mitigating one attack. That's cheaper than a block, but still, you don't have the option of just letting the attack hit you. So a goblin can attack you for 3 dice, and you're still having to pay 2 during the upkeep. I would say it's worth it, but the only thing is if you really needed to do some other spell, it takes that option out of your hands. However, with its 12 mana cost, although one could dispel this, that would be really expensive to dispel. Okay, next is one that's kind of a worst case scenario card. If you're just covered in enchantments that are cursing you and your army, there's the Destroy Magic card. So this destroys all enchantments in the target zone, revealed and hidden. So those nullifies and things like that won't affect this. Okay, next we have